Hey guys, so I'm very happy to say that not only did The Batman meet my expectations, but it actually exceeded them. So let's talk about the actors first. Robert Pattinson. So a lot of people didn't really know whether or not he could pull off the role of Bruce Wayne, but I always had faith in him, and I'm glad to say that faith has paid off in a big way because guys, this is my new favorite Batman. He did a great job. He brought a new tone to Bruce. He was very stoic. He was very out of touch with the world. He was a reclusive loner that hardly ever left his mansion. And it's very different to like The Dark Knight, where we saw him portrayed as this womanizer, this playboy. In this, he's the complete opposite, and it definitely works. So poor Dano as the Riddler was completely terrifying. So basically, in the opening scene, it was very reminiscent of that movie Seven. It was very much like a dark, gritty, murder mystery, New York sort of vibe. That was the whole Batman movie, basically, the whole vibe of it, but in that opening scene, it just felt so much like the movie because you have this guy who is very much a serial killer and he has the serial killer vibes down so well. He really did pull off the just completely antisocial, so angry at the world vibe that the Riddler had. And I can honestly say that not a lot of Gotham villains have creeped me out the way that he did. And my only complaint is that he isn't in the movie enough. I really would have liked them to double the time that he had in the movie, and I really feel like they should have just gone with the dark approach because it sort of felt like when they started to get in the second and third act, it didn't really have that same feel as in the opening scene. And I would have really loved it if they kept that. And yeah, I just really feel like he nailed this role, and I hope in the sequel we get to see more of him. So I would say that the actor that played Falcone is the weak link in the movie. He just wasn't intimidating. I didn't buy him as this all-powerful mob boss. And if you've seen the show Gotham, the guy that played Falcone on that was so amazing. He really was intimidating the way that a guy who is running the criminal underworld needs to be. And this version of Falcone, he just didn't do it for me. So the Penguin, I think Colin Farrell definitely brought something new to the role. The prosthetics were very impressive, like he just did a complete transformation. But I wouldn't say the script worked very well in his favour to make him an interesting character that I wanted to see more of. I know he is a good actor, so I don't think it's his fault, but I just didn't really find him to be very interesting, to be honest. So Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman did a really good job, but she definitely didn't beat Michelle Pfeiffer in my opinion. She didn't even beat Anne Hathaway. I still do prefer them as Catwoman. I think she was a really interesting, complex character, don't get me wrong, and I really hope that they bring her back in the sequel and I get to see more of her. I did like her, I just didn't prefer her to other versions of Catwoman. So Jeffrey Wright as James Gordon did a good job as someone trying to do the right thing surrounded by dirty cops, but he didn't really bring a whole lot to the movie. So Andy Serkis as Alfred Pennyworth, honestly, I'm just going to say it, he was a little bit boring, a little bit bland. I've often seen, like in Gotham or Batman Returns, Alfred is a bit sassy, and I really like it when they go to that like sassy Alfred approach, but in this one, he barely felt like a character. He really didn't bring much in the way of guidance to Bruce like Alfred does in The Dark Knight. You know, he just felt like a useless character. So when the movie tried to make a joke, it felt a little out of place. I would have rather they just stuck with the whole serious, gritty tone of the movie, which they pretty much did, but still, the few jokes that they did have felt really out of place. So, at the beginning of the movie, I was sitting there wondering, are we going to get that scene that we've seen a million times before of the Waynes being killed in the alleyway? And I'm very happy to say that we did not see that. It's been done so many times. I've seen those pearls broken so many times. Instead, we see a city official who was corrupt, killed by the Riddler, and his child gets orphaned, and you see how Batman sort of looks at the kid and thinks, this reminds me so much of what happened to me. So we see Batman meeting Selina for the first time when she's working at Falcone's club as a waitress. So Batman's there to interrogate Falcone. And basically, wait for it, we find out that Selina is actually Falcone's daughter. So basically, there's this club within the club that her mum used to work at. Her mum and Falcone had a thing, and then her mum passed away. She was murdered, and yeah, so now Selina is working for her father, but her father, Falcone, doesn't actually know that she's his daughter, because basically he abandoned her to foster care when her mother died. So she's working there now, trying to, find a way to get money out of these rich guys that come to the club. So the murdered city official has an affair with Selina's friend. So basically that's what brings Batman and her together. He wants to find the killer, whoever killed the official, and she wants revenge for her friend. So Riddler starts to kill more city officials. It's all part of his grand plan to expose the corruption in the city and the lies. So there was this renewal program which was meant to help the city, but basically it was a cover-up for corruption, and basically we find out that pretty much everyone in the city, the cops, everybody, they all work for Falcone. So as the movie progresses, we see the Riddler leaving all these clues for the Batman to follow and figure out. So as he's going on that journey of figuring out all these clues, he finds out the truth about his parents. So basically his mother, Martha Wayne, killed one of her parents. So Bruce's grandpa or grandmother. I can't remember which one. It's only briefly touched upon. And then the family that she was from, the Arkham family, which was one of the founding families of Gotham City, sent her to the asylum. So they're obviously trying to cover that up because they don't want it getting out to the public. And then this reporter finds out what happened, and he says that he's going to expose Martha Wayne. So her husband, Thomas Wayne, is scared because he doesn't want this to happen to his wife. So he goes to Falcone for help. Or Falcone. I keep saying both. Let's just say Falcone says, yes, I will help you. And he doesn't realize that Falcone's help means that he's going to kill the reporter. And that seems like a really naive thing for Thomas Wayne to think, because this guy, he's a politician, he's running for mayor, he can't be that naive, but he believes that Falcone is only going to beat up this guy or something, but he ends up killing him. So Thomas Wayne feels guilty and says that I'm going to go to the police and tell them what happened. And then him and Martha get killed later that night. So it's pretty obvious that Falcone was the one that killed the Waynes. So what happens next is that Selina, her friend that had the affair with the city official guy, ends up dead, and we find out that Falcone was behind it. So Selina finally goes to confront her father and tells him that she's his daughter, and in a very unemotional moment, he basically just doesn't care, and then tries to kill her and says, hey, I also killed your mother. This guy is just killing everybody, seriously. Half the city is probably dead because of Falcone. So basically, Batman comes and saves her. And then once again, she tries to kill her father in revenge for what he's done to her friend and her mother. And Batman stops her and says, if you cross this line, you're going to become just as bad as him. And I think that was a bit harsh, Batman. Let's be honest, that was pretty harsh. So Penguin is tired of working for Falcone, and Falcone, as he's finally getting arrested, ends up getting killed by the Penguin because he doesn't want to be number 2 anymore. He wants to be number 1. So, problem solved. Falcone is finally dead. So then we can bring about the other villain into the spotlight, the Riddler. So the climax in the 3rd act is a little slow and disjointed, but ultimately satisfying and emotional. So basically, the Riddler unsuccessfully tries to get the mayor killed by his followers from his website and floods Gotham, leading to chaos. He doesn't try to kill the mayor himself as he gets caught and sent to Arkham. So Batman visits him in Arkham for information, and the Riddler completely breaks down when Batman says that he doesn't agree with what he's doing because he thinks that Batman is going to be on his side. So it's revealed his last target is Bruce Wayne. So he doesn't actually realize that Batman and Bruce Wayne are one and the same. So one thing that I loved about this movie, especially in the 3rd act, when Batman is helping everybody out of the water, is how visually stunning it is. It is a visually very beautiful movie. So if you've read the Batman prequel novel, you find out that the Riddler actually burnt down the orphanage that was one of the Wayne properties because he's filled with so much anger towards Bruce Wayne and the rich people that he feels have oppressed him his whole life. So we see Selina leaving at the end of the movie, and she'll probably be back in the sequel. But she never finds out that Bruce is actually Batman, and she is sort of like the Riddler. She doesn't like rich people either, but obviously she's a lot, less psychotic than the Riddler, but she has a pretty low opinion of men like Bruce Wayne. And Bruce can be pretty hypocritical and narrow-minded as well when it comes to criminals because he can't put himself in their shoes. Having grown up rich, he can't see that sometimes a thief may need to steal food, and that doesn't make them a horrible person. He has a very black and white view of criminals. And like you see when Selina asks him to help her friend, and, he says she was asking for it because she was involved with these mafia guys. And it just feels like we don't really know a lot about her character. She could have been there by force. So to have Batman just be like, hey, she was asking for it. She was involved with the wrong people, so she had it coming. It just felt like it was very narrow-minded of him. So it will be really interesting to see if both of them are more open-minded in the sequel. So when it comes to The Dark Knight, that is still definitely my favorite Batman movie. But still, I am definitely excited for the sequel that we're hopefully going to get with this. And I think it was a really great movie. And I love the score. I love the theme of Nirvana, of Something in the Way playing. It really set the mood well. I will say really my only complaint is, okay, so when Batman was initially following Selina home, he was watching her with a pair of binoculars and he had a bit of a Edward Cullen moment. So if you don't know what I mean, in the Twilight book, the vampire Edward would always spy on his soon-to-be girlfriend Bella, and it was a little creepy because he watched her getting changed in her underwear, and it just felt like, okay, Batman, Not cool. Anyway, so we see at the end of the movie Joker. We finally get to see, well, not really see because it's really hard to see him. The scene is quite dark, but we sort of get the impression that he has a lot of scars on his face. So he is in the cell next to Riddler in Arkham and he wants to be friends with the Riddler, and he has this really chilling, bone-chilling laugh, and I cannot wait to see him. I really am excited to see the Joker come. They're obviously setting him up to come in the sequel. So this is a long movie. It's over 3 hours runtime. But honestly, it went quick. It didn't feel like it was overly bloated. I wouldn't really cut anything out. So the end scene isn't a proper post-credit scene. Basically, what it is a question mark. One of the Riddler's question marks, followed by the words goodbye, and there's a link to Riddler's site, El Rata Alada, whatever it is. It was a little bit pointless, to be honest, and at that point of the movie, I really needed the bathroom. I was waiting like 3.5 hours at that point to finally see a scene which really was pointless, so don't really bother waiting around unless you really, really want to see it. So anyway, I would give this a 9 out of 10. So let me know in the comments down below what you thought of the movie, what was your favorite character, and if you could comment, subscribe, like, all of that stuff. It really helps me to grow my channel. Thanks a lot, guys.